Let's start, though, with that climate summit. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to increase Canada's targets for cutting greenhouse gas emissions. He's set to do so tomorrow at the Global Climate Summit. Back in 2015, 194 nations signed onto the Paris Agreement. Canada committed to a 30% cut in emissions from 2005 levels by 2030. Now, sources tell our colleagues at Radio Canada that Canada's new climate change target will rise to at least a 40% cut in emissions, but will be no higher than 45%. The UK is also preparing for Biden's Global Climate Summit tomorrow, and it has announced what could be the world's most ambitious climate change target. Boris Johnson's government wants to cut emissions to 78% below 1990 levels by 2035. Susan Lejeune-Daldressac is the UK High Commissioner to Canada. She's with us here in Ottawa. Hello, High Commissioner. Nice to see you as always. Thank you for making the time.
Good to be here. Thank you.
Before we get into the specific targets as outlined by the UK, I just wanted to get your initial impressions as we head into tomorrow's summit. Many countries are announcing either a plan to or a specific, more aggressive target for what was originally agreed to in the Paris Climate Agreement. How significant do you think this summit is?
I think it's really important because I think the more ambitious the targets are that are unveiled tomorrow, the more pressure there will be on those countries which haven't yet committed and which are sort of the back markers on these issues. So I think it's a really important moment. It's another step on the way to the Glasgow summit in November. And I think it will be a very important signal to the rest of the world about how seriously certain countries are taking these issues and how much more there is still left to be done if we are seriously going to tackle climate change.
Speaking of certain countries, it's politically fascinating as well, just because it's being led by the new administration in the U.S. after 4 years of, what many experts say was an absence of leadership on the climate file. How reliable, though, given what's happened over the last 4 years and the debate that it takes place in the United States, for example, around this issue, do you think American leadership on the issue is?
I think it's very clear that the US is back at the table, and back at the table not just in terms of its own commitment to these issues, but in the way that the US is engaging around the world with other key players. Last week it was China, and I think that's a very, very positive step for all of us.
How key is China in all of this? John Kerry went to China, spoke to his counterpart there. I was listening to a briefing this morning from the U.S. State Department on how important it was to have China at the table. Your perspective on that?
Absolutely essential. China is one of the biggest emitters, particularly in terms of coal-powered fire stations. It's a massive economic powerhouse. So there can't be effective action on China without the effective action on climate without the engagement of China, quite clearly.
Given their dependence on coal, though, how much faith do you have in whatever they end up saying about being more aggressive on reducing emissions?
I think we have to take them at their word, and so far they have done what they said they're going to do. I think one of the things about coal is that it is becoming more expensive and the alternatives are becoming cheaper. So I think that's an important economic argument to play back to the Chinese. And I think there will be pressure, as there is in every country around the world, from their population. This is where a lot of the pressure on our governments has been, and I expect the Chinese government will be looking at those issues in exactly the same way as every other government around the world.
Let me ask you about the UK's government and the targets that were set. As I mentioned in the introduction, 78% below 1990 levels by 2035. As I was reading more and more about it, the main criticism I saw emerge was that it's a very aggressive target, but without a corresponding plan laid out in detail. Your response to that?
So I think it is incredibly aggressive. It's very ambitious. But I think what the government has done so far is put in very clear language the sorts of areas in which action is going to be taken. It is very clear that we have already made huge progress in terms of energy and electricity generation, but there are other areas like transport, housing, and some of our big industrial complexes that need more work. We've put in place a new plan to help our oil and gas industries in the North Sea transition and move to a much more carbon friendly way of operating. So I think there's a lot that's been done, and we've already put in place some other targets like phasing out the sale of petrol-powered vehicles, and we've brought forward our targets on that. So there's already a lot of work that's been done, but it will take a lot more work to get us to this target, which is, as you say, the most ambitious, and it is legislated for. So the government has committed with legislation to do this. So we will get there, and it will be, I think, a very, very important message for the rest of the world.
You mentioned COP26 in Glasgow. The UK is hosting in November. Is the plan to have more details and more? I take your point about there being actions laid out and sort of a broad strokes plan, but environmentalists are citing the need for more details. Do you anticipate they will come in line with that November meeting?
Yes, I'm sure there'll be more to come. And the government, in announcing this target, has taken on board the recommendations of an independent body, the Committee on Climate Change, and they have made a lot of recommendations about exactly the ways in which the government should approach these targets. So I'm sure that the detail will be filled in between now and November, and there'll be some more exciting announcements between now and then.
If you don't mind, High Commissioner, I just wanted to switch topics before I let you go and ask you about COVID. Obviously, your country has had a lot of success in vaccinating its population at a particularly quick rate right off the bat. There is still, though, lots of concern right around the world about various variants, I should say. And I noticed here there's a debate going on about whether or not stricter measures at the border, for example, should be employed, especially when it comes to what we're seeing in Brazil and in particular in India. And I noticed that the government in the UK has brought in or has added India to its travel ban list. Can you explain why the government thought it was necessary?
I think you've put your finger on exactly why. It's concern about this particular new variant which has emerged in India, which seems to be particularly easily transmissible, and it was that, and it was also the fact that there were large numbers of people still travelling between the UK and India, and so what we've done was we've put India now on our red list, which means that anybody arriving from India to the UK has to be a permanent resident of the UK. Travellers otherwise are not allowed in, and when they arrive they have to do a mandatory hotel quarantine for 2 weeks to make sure that those variants are not brought to the UK.
And has there been, with that red list, is there a sense among the government or within the government in the UK that list is effective at controlling the spread of certain variants? Like, do travel measures from the government's perspective work?
It has been so far, yes. The thing that they haven't done this time is put on a flight ban. So in some of the other cases, they put on a flight ban to stop people actually even coming to the UK from the countries of concern. But I think it has been successful in preventing the import of some of the more, or large numbers of some of the more worrying variants that have emerged.
And one last thing, if you don't mind, Ralph Goodale, who's been on our show multiple times today, named kind of your counterpart for Canada in the UK. Have you spoken to him at all?
I haven't spoken to him since he's been nominated. He's been quite busy doing other things, but I have been in contact with him, and I think he's a fantastic choice. We're really looking forward to having him in London. Okay,
High Commissioner, I'll leave it there. I appreciate your time as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.